Right, morning, everybody. Welcome. So this morning we discussing the poem by Benjamin Zephaniah. What if? So if you can keep your money when governments about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust your neighbour when they trust not you, and they can be very noisy too, if you can await the warm delights of summer, then summer comes and goes with sun not seen, and pay so much for drinking water, knowing that the water is unclean. If you seek peace in times of war creation and you can see that the oil merchants are to blame, if you can meet a pimp or politician and treat those two impostors just the same, if you cannot bear disunited nations and you think this new world order is a trick, if you ever tried to build good race relations and watch bad policing mess your work up quick, if you can make one heap of all your savings and risk buying a small house and plot, then sit back and watch the economy inflating, then have to deal with the negative equity you've got. If you can force your mind and body to continue when all the social services have gone, if you struggle on when there is nothing in you except the knowledge that justice can be wrong, if you can speak the truth to common people or walk with kings and queens and live no lie, if you can see how power can be evil and know that every censor is a spy, if you can fill an unforgiving lifetime with the years of working hard to make ends meet, you may not be wealthy, but I'm sure you will find that you can hold your head high as you walk in the streets. So thanks to Ed for that. So where to start? So I suppose we better start with Ed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I only sort of suggested the poem as a way of dodging what-if analysis. And now, because the poem's called What If, I'm going to have to give some what-if analysis. Benjamin Zephaniah is a British poet. I think he's about 5 or 6 years younger than me. He did actually live in South Africa for a couple of years, but now he spends his time half in China and half in the UK. And when he lives in the UK, he lives in a place called Spalding, which is kind of really, really weird because Spalding's a market town of about 25,000 people in the Fenland area of England. It's not where you'd expect to find a Rastafarian poet. Its sole claim to fame, it used to have a flower festival, but that's now died out. So it's kind of a weird place to find him. And I think if you, and the poem's based on the poem by Rudyard Kipling, and you'll find that the way it flows is exactly the way that If flows. And I think I don't write poems very much, but I have written one based on another poem. Well, it's based on a hymn, and it's very difficult to do. But I think what happens is something occurs to you as a hook and you have to do it. And I think he felt that with this. He's a very interesting character. He kind of started off life quite badly. He had a bad home life. He spent all his youth in trouble. He in fact went to prison for, I think, for theft. He was fitted up by the police a few times. Like most black people in the UK, he gets picked on by the police, especially when you come from a poor neighbourhood. Some people see him as too establishment, especially the black community see him as too establishment. And in fact, he was offered a OBE, but he turned it down because it contained the words British Empire, and he felt it was too connected with slavery. And I think the construction of the poem's interesting because he's left some lines exactly the same as the original. So you realize it is based on that poem. So our losing theirs and blaming it on you is exactly the same as the second line in the original poem. And treat those two impostors just the same is the same line as in the original poem. And then other ones, he's changed very, very slightly. So you kind of think, well, is that the same as it said in the first place? because it says, if you can make one heap of all your savings, well, the original line is if you can make one heap of all your winnings. And then he goes on to say, and the original one is, and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss. But he, I'm assuming, probably bought his house at roughly the same time as I did, or maybe a bit later. And there was a crisis before the crisis of 2008 when interest rates went through the roof, property prices fell, and people got stuck in this trap. They couldn't sell their house, they couldn't afford the mortgage. So I think that's what that line about negative equity is about. He's making a statement that he's British in the lines, if you can await the warm delights of summer, then summer comes and goes with sun not seen, because that is a typical British summer. So I think there's a strong statement there that he's British. I only picked out a couple of lines that really resonate with me. And in a way, I found this poem disappointing in that it's not as radical as it could be. And perhaps that's what it's intended to be, is to be quiet, to make a protest by being quiet. Because the lines I found really interesting were, and remember, this was written way back in, I can't remember when it was written actually, about 2009, was it? Yeah, I think 2009. If you've ever tried to build good race relations and watch bad policing mess your work up quick, it's quite interesting, because in 2003, his cousin was killed by the police in almost exactly the same circumstances as George Floyd. And he himself has also been, since he's been famous, also pulled over by the police because they tend to think anyone in a fancy car who's black is a drug dealer. So I found it quite interesting that he chose to do it quite quietly that way, rather than rant and rave and really have a go at it. And you think what happened when the whole George Floyd thing kicked off? You've got the Black Lives Matter thing, etc. But he went through that with his cousin in Birmingham in 2003. And then the other two lines that, another one that I quite liked was, if you can force your mind and body to continue, it's very, very similar to the line that's in the original poem, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew. And I just found it quite interesting the way he just played around with that. And then when you come towards the end, if you can fill an unforgiving lifetime, the original line was, if you can fill an unforgiving minute. So he's changed the whole time scale, and he's changed the time frame from minutes to lifetime and years. Because I can't remember the original line, but with years of working hard, it wasn't that, it was minutes before. And then the very last two lines, you may not be wealthy, but I'm sure you'll find that you can hold your head high as you walk the streets. I wonder if that's a bit tongue-in-cheek, because this poem's all about oppression and surviving, whereas the original If was about the old British spirit and the old British way of thinking and the old stiff upper lip stuff and being a man and standing up and triumph, whereas this is about surviving the grind. And I do wonder whether it's worth being able to walk the streets with your head held high. What's in it for you if you can do that? Is that the way that we oppress people by saying, yeah, it's okay, you're poor, it's okay, you haven't got rights, it's okay, you know, you live in slum accommodation. But as long as you can hold your head up high because you've been nice to your granny, it doesn't matter. So that's my thoughts on the poem, and I hope you found that useful. I hope other people enjoyed the poem as well. But for me, it didn't quite go far enough.
Great, thanks, Ed. Yeah, I think so many things in life they don't go quite far enough. But anyway, yeah, it's very interesting. And then thanks for the background. I think it's also gives us some good insight there. So, Benay, let's hear your thoughts.
Hi. Okay, so I must admit I also found the poem lacked a little bit of depth, but maybe it's because I didn't know his history, and maybe if I'd looked more into his history, I would have understood where he was coming from. So thanks for that, Ed. I would just like to give my overall impression of the poem and what he says. And my walk away from it was that if you're going to hold on to your values, if you can have insight into what's happening around you, if you accept what you can't control, then you'll have some composure in your life and you'll actually be true to who you are. And that's the extent of what I took away from the poem. Maybe I'll reread it given the history of the guy and see more of his poverty and oppression in it. But that's what I took away from it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Renee. Yeah, it's interesting how, you know, different same things mean different things to different people. Cecile, your thoughts? Okay, Cecile's on a call. All right, Donovan, let's get across to you next.
Morning, everyone again. Yeah, I don't know if I'm able to summarize the poem, but one thought stood out quite a bit to me when he mentions about justice not being there, or justice being absent, or or implying that life is not fair or it's not just. It's basically a general experience. It's not country specific. It's life in general is not fair. So yeah, it's all about the unfairness of life, unfairness of the situation you're in, unfairness of the country you stay, unfairness of your experiences that you encounter. Yeah. Thank you. That's all I can say at this stage. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Donovan. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure if we had a discussion on fairness, but maybe if we haven't, perhaps we should. So, Trevor Carty, your thoughts?
One thing I love about Ed, he always contextualizes everything so perfectly. So thanks for that, Ed. It just allowed me to have flashbacks of Black Lives Matter and all sorts of things while you were positioning that for us. And the title of the poem, What If, really, I think it's totally inappropriate. I think the title of the poem should be If You. If you just look at the way he structured this thing, it's all about if you. And that comes back to this mindset thing and what's going on in your neurons. So he says, if you, maybe 24 times in that poem. He doesn't say what if at all. So it's all about if you make this decision, this could be the outcome. If you view things this way, that'll be the outcome. And it just comes back to this winning mindset. It doesn't matter if you're poor, doesn't matter if you're wealthy, doesn't matter if you're black, doesn't matter if you're white. But if you take what you have been dealt and put it into some neuron pathways that allow you to set yourself free, to set up a winning mindset, well, then what if? So yeah, I think he should have called it If You, and I'm going to get hold of him and tell him he should probably have another go.
All right, Trevor, thanks. All right.
Trevor, he practices Tai Chi, just in case. He's a big guy.
Good, good. Right, so we've got two people tied up with telephone calls. That's Jasper and Cecile at the moment. So
Ed,
Chanel, over to you.
Ed, I practiced chai tea.
Very good. But yours is a bit wetter and sloppier than his, so it's so Trevor, over to you.
So I just think this is deep. He's clearly the Bob Marley of the UK in the way that he's actually taken Kipling's version and put his own words to it. But for me, the depth of this is someone who understands common people and what common people actually go through. And I think he's right in it from that perspective that, you know, sometimes what we talk about being in the top 1% of life and business and being the winner on the podium, the vast majority, 99.99999%, it may be a bridge too far. And I think what he is doing as this poet or this muse is turning around and saying, you know what, don't let people get you down. Don't let the high and mighty get you down. Hold your head up high, because this to me is not cynical. This to me is a warning of what you are going to be confronted in living in the real world. And I was just as Ed was going through it, and Ed, I absolutely agree with Trevor Carty. You've got to be the front end of giving us context from your perspective on this, because it's absolutely fantastic. But as you were going through your version, I just went to his first lines. If you can keep your money, and so that's number one about savings. When all of those who tell you what you've got to be doing are not keeping theirs, I think. So he's having a damn good go at government and power, and not to listen to these people, start thinking for yourself. Then the next, if you can trust your neighbors when they trust not you. And so be wary of the people all around you. Vote for yourself. Trust yourself, number one. If you can await the warm delights of summer. So he's saying, listen, you're going to go through winter. So he's pointing out all of these dips and depths in society that are very real to me. If you seek peace in times of war and creation. So I'm jumping all of the lines, and I'm only going on the first lines to actually pick out of what I see there. It's the contrarian. If you have a look at it, I mean, I'm blown away with what's happening in the United States and how the buildup of these different factions and what's happening here in South Africa and all around the world. And this guy's obviously a bard and a peacemonger, and so he's trying to get out there and say, hey, raise your level to become someone that is a role model to others. That fits what we're doing. If you can meet a pimp or politician, and he's saying, man, don't hold them, either of these, in high esteem or actually low esteem, whatever. They're all the same. And if you cannot bear disunited nations, so not to be troubled by these, but to actually consider that they are just weak human beings, almost as they perhaps see the common folk out there as being weak. Even the people at the top are weak. If you've ever tried to build good race relations, isn't that the biggest problem that's happening all around the world at the moment? What else can I see here? Trying to get down. If you can make one heap of all your savings, isn't that what people are trying to do on a daily basis? To make money to survive, and then to make money to put something aside. And if you have a look at the African context, people are starving to send their kids to get better education. and then you go out and risk because there are individuals who turn around and say, hey, put all your money into your house and home, and then the government stuffs it up because the value of the rand versus the dollar goes through the roof. And we discover yesterday that we have females that head up blooming boards, and in the meantime they're actually playing around with forex transactions. How many of our government ministers are actually ramping up the rand dollar exchange rate because they have an investment in forex, etc.? Know that you've got to try and get yourself out of debt, is where I come from. And interpret, if you can force your mind and body to continue against all of this negativity, if you struggle on when there's nothing in you, man, isn't that how almost everybody feels in their deepest depths of despair? And I suppose those long distance runners who are feeling the pain, apart from Ed, the rest of us go through deep dips when we're actually running, and we know that we have to get ourselves through that. If you can speak the truth, if you can speak the truth to common people, I think this is what he's all about. Or walk with kings and queens and tell them to go and stuff their OB up because they should be granting this out to common people. I love this guy. I think he's pure genius. If you can see how power can be evil, if you can fill an unforgiving lifetime. So you've lived your entire life, you look back and you say, what the hell have I achieved? Don't look that way. There's been something happening here. Hold your head up high. That's what I think he's getting to. What else? Is there another if? Okay. If I don't stop, I think Ivan's going to cut me down here. No, listen, I think this guy is genius. Absolute genius in what he's done here. So I'm inspired by what he's done, because I think he's turning around to us and saying, do not ignore the common folk out there. They are critical. And we've got to include everyone in the world. I love what he's done.
Great, thanks, Trevor. Right, Jasper, let's hear your thoughts.
Hi there. Yes, I do agree. It's a great poem, and the first one was a great poem too. And I think Donovan's almost summary of it is that life is not fair, but you have to live it anyway. My thoughts was just going on a different tangent with all the challenges that one faces on a daily basis, whether it's security and people feel unsafe, or whether there's corruption and whatever the case may be. I wanted to almost just throw another slogan into the pot: do it anyway. So yes, life is unfair. And think in terms of trust. How many times have you gone into situations where you started off trusting people and they broke your trust? But are you now going to become a hermit and not do anything? And then it would be go on and trust people anyway. Not necessarily the people who burnt you, but trust new people. The same with love. How many times has it not worked for you, but love anyway? Build. How many times have you built up stuff and then people come and break it up, whether it's a marriage or a business or whatever, but build anyway? Make friends. How many times has it not worked, but make friends anyway? The same with savings. Inflation, and you can have all the excuses of why not, but save anyway. And then ultimately improve yourself. So that's really the only thing that we can control. And then within all of this myths, we navigate the minefield. But you know what? Let's walk this walk anyway. That's my contribution.
Okay, thanks, Jasper. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, people always, well, not, generalizations are terrible. Some people often look for excuses why not. And I think exactly what you're saying, Jasper, is why. Let's do it. Let's turn the why not negative into a why not positive and say, do it anyway. I absolutely love that. Whereas in many cases, can't do it because the why not is a different thing. And what Trevor's card is hammering on about the neurons, Trevor. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The neurons need to be rewired, and it becomes, you know, what we were talking about the other day, becoming conscious about it. Yeah, you want to add something?
Ivan, yeah, I just want to, you know, we've gone through quite a milestone this last year, and I just want to throw our memories back a year and a day or two. You know, we had a World Cup final in the rugby space. It seems like forever ago, but that 18 months ago was something and none of us were really looking forward to, because what if these Oaks got beaten 57-0 again? And yet if you change your freaking mindset, and if you get some decent coaching, and if you get taught how your neurons can be realigned, and if you play the game not as an individual but as a team, and if you understand that you're part of the greater South Africa and the rugby world and the blah and the blah. So I just want to add in the power of we are the world champions.
Good. All right. Thanks, everyone. So, Trevor, now back over to you to tell us, have you any thoughts, if you have any thoughts for tomorrow?
I never have any thoughts. I get stimulated by what people are doing. Yeah, he has been watching Chasing the Sun. So no, what's come out of this? What do people want to chat about? Has anyone been watching the debacle on the Zondo Commission over the last 2 days? Oh,
I just read the headlines. I don't watch.
For goodness sake, you got to be seen. The major challenge of not having good governance with your money, and there I disagree with Ed. He put a statement in the thing: government debt is good, and I understand where he's coming from, and he relates that to personal debt is bad. I'm saying when government debt is almost at what are we looking at, 95% of GDP, or even into the trillions, who's paying for this debt into the future? It's taxpayers. That's you and me. So you've got to have smart people working with your money as taxpayers. So maybe we're going to be talking about that. What is it? Do we just keep paying tax to fund these people's lifestyles in our governments and what they're actually doing? So I don't know if that helps you, Ivan, but I'm absolutely the bliksem in with what I'm listening to, and just the depth of the fingers in the cookie jar and what's going on. And you've got to be watching this to actually understand it so that we can put a stop to it.
I think for Zondo to lose his cool and to start getting irritated, he's been so composed throughout the whole commission, and for him to start getting irritated says a lot, John. I think things will happen.
I don't think he's just losing his cool. I think he's embarrassed. He's absolutely embarrassed that we as a people can actually do this to our own people, the common people. And that brings us in a round circle back to Benjamin Zephaniah, as he's talking about governments that actually stuff it up. We've got to hold these people to account. So somewhere, transparency, good governance.
Yeah,
I don't know if you, yeah.
Ed wanted to add in something there.
Yeah, one of the things that Benjamin Zephaniah has been banging on about, and I think he's quite right, is that the racist thugs of his youth are now in suits, in positions of power, and what they're doing is far more insidious. And I think that's the same with what Trevor's saying about almost criminals in power, but they're respectable because they're wearing a suit or they've been elected or whatever. And I just thought that was very interesting what he was saying about that. Actually, there was no change except they've just, got a bit older, worn a suit and a respectable, but they're still practicing exploiting people.
Yeah, it's about populists and voting populists into power and what is going on there. But we've done quite well avoiding politics and religion and all that sort of thing. Yeah. So someone better take us down or up a direction that is hugely positive. But I think it's also usually positive to actually ask for transparency, good governance, and people to think about other people, and not to have the common, and I hesitate to use the term man, but common folk being affected by these people who abuse their power when they are there to represent all of us.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is a challenge, and you know, I really think we need to focus on keeping these conversations on the positive side of things, and what we can do rather than what is out of our control. And certainly things like the Zondo Commission and the like are out of our individual controls. So the question is, how can we make a difference? You know, how can we do things from a positive perspective? You know, from our own positions, and not, you know, not get dragged down into these negativity spirals that I think politicians worldwide are creating. I mean, you know, is the UK any different? Is the US any different? Is China any different? I really don't think so. I mean, there's been some fun and games with Jack Ma's latest listing. I don't know if you guys have seen that. That's been quite interesting. Originally punted as being equal in size to the British GDP, a single listing in China, and now somebody's put a hold on it. You know, probably some similar challenges over there. So nothing we can influence really as individuals. So what can we influence? And maybe that's where we need to take this tomorrow. Is you know, what can I do? You know, how can I make a difference? Where can I start to do things? I mean, Ed was participating in interesting discussions yesterday relating to power distribution in Cornwall. You know, making you know a contribution there. So yeah, I don't know if anybody has any other suggestions or thoughts. Ed, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one about where can we make our contribution, and where can we leverage stuff to make a change? Because I think, you know, it is possible to make a change.
Yeah, I think all change starts with us as individuals. So yeah, that's okay. So let's pick up on that tomorrow morning. See how you can make a contribution, how you can make a difference, and yeah, maybe it starts by writing a poem. I don't know. We've had a couple of those now, so we will.
I'm still waiting for Edward's poem. He still hasn't given us his personal poem.
I have got a poem, but it's nothing to do with business.
That doesn't matter.
I think Wisdoms is also about personal growth. So
very much so.
I will send you my poem, Ivan, and you can decide whether you circulate it or not.
All right, I'll do that. Thanks very much.
You can have influence.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Have a poetic day further, and enjoy yourselves and make a difference. And we'll see you in the morning. Go well.